This is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Yud Beis, and all the learning for this month. The month of Elul has been generously sponsored as a tremendous chos aliyas neshama of Esther Rezel Basra Meir B'siyata Dishmaya. As a Kadosh Baruch Hu is closer to us, we know Elul Hashem is Basadeh, so too all our learning should bring an incredible schos for us and for our families, and most particularly for Esther Rezel Basra Meir, elevating her neshama higher in Gan Eden Shalmayla. We pick it up on Yud Aleph Amid Beis. We are 8 lines from the bottom. The first one line is Rav Shimon ben Lakish. And we're in the middle of describing the reason why Beis Shammai, we had a machlokes, what is the minimum amount for the money of Kiddushin. Beis Hillel says a pruta b'shava pruta. Beis Shammai said a dinar of b'shava dinar. Yesterday we had 2 reasons as to why Beis Shammai requires a dinar. Comes along Reish Lakish with a third reason. Reish Shimon ben Lakish Aimer Taimayu de Beis Shammai. What is the reason of Beis Shammai? Kedech Chizkiah, like Chizkiah. Damar Chizkiah, as Chizkiah has taught us, as Chizkiah we'll see in a few more daf. Amar Chizkiah, Amar Kra, says the Basik, Vehefda, and he causes her to be redeemed. Melamed shemigaras mipidyaina v'yatza. We learn out from here that an Amma Ivriya deducts the value of the years she already was an Eved from the price for redemption. She pays the rest and she goes free. So far, what's the Raya? Explains the Gemara. If we're going to say what's going on over here, that the master originally gave her a dinner, he bought her with a dinner, then, so a dinner is a denomination that could be made less. That you could say that you could subtract from a dinner all the way down to a pruta. So if the master originally purchased her for a dinner, it makes sense that now for that time that she worked, it subtracts to a pruta, and then she'll pay the pruta and go free. Eli Amid, if you're going to tell me that the original acquisition was Diavla pruta, me pruta, mi mikara, could you subtract, could you deduct anything less than a pruta? And therefore, the minimum purchase must be a dinar. So this is by an Eved, or Namat to be more particular. From here, Beis Shammai learns that similar is going to be for Kiddushin, as we will explain in a moment. But before we get there, ask the Gemara 1 second. 3 lines from the bottom, Yud Aleph Amid Beis. V'delma hachi kama rachmana. Maybe the way to learn the pasuk is as follows. Hey, chadiyayiv lo dinar. In the scenario in which he gives a dinner, then tigarad pruta. That's when there is this concept of the hefta migaras mibidyaina v'yatza in the event. Doesn't have to be, but maybe in the event that a dinner was given. However, echad yavla pruta lo tigarad klal. But maybe where the original purchase was a pruta, then maybe this concept would not apply. So how do you know that you learn out from the pasuk that in every scenario there has to be a dinner, so there's that which can be subtracted? Maybe it's only in the event that there is. And with that, we turn over to Yud Beis Amid Aleph and answers the Gemara, Loi salka daitach. Don't entertain that which you're saying. Don't think it's only in such a scenario. Why? Because when it comes to purchasing in Amma Ivriya, Dumya di Yud, it has to be similar to the halacha of Yud, which is the process of, if you look at the second line of Rashi, the Rashi Adan Liadlo B'Sach Shnei Am Imahois. It's a Kiddushin that the master is able to marry her through a process of yiyud, of designation. He marries her. Him yoimer Allah, continuing in Rashi in the second white line, if he says to her, Arei at miyued asliv ma'ashish li alecha v'intzar kesav acher, he doesn't have to pay her anything else. So explains the Gemara, Dom Yod Yiyod, back to the Gemara in the top line of Yud Beis Amid Aleph, Ma Yiyod aval gav di boyi miyayid v'boyi loy miyayid. Just like by Yiyud, If he wants, doesn't have to marry her, he's allowed to. And still, kol echad lo matim yayid, lo yahave zvine, and still, kol echad lo matim yayid, whenever he's not able to perform yiyah, the sale would not be a valid sale. Hachanami kol echad lo matim migira, lo yahave zvine, even though it doesn't have to be, but it has to be a potential. So to over here answers the Gemara, if the original sale price was only a pruta, there would be no potential, therefore it can't be. So says the Gemara, that's the right, that the minimal purchase price must have been a dinar. And now after the Gemara proves that indeed we have a raya from the purchase of an Amma Evriya, now the Gemara finishes off the raya, Ukidushay Isha lebei Shammai, Nafka lahu me Amma Evriya. And Kiddushin we learn from Amma Evriya. And how? Ma Amma Evriya, 6 lines down your base and Aleph. Bepruta lemekanya, af Isha bepruta lo imikacha. Just like an Amma Evriya you can't purchase with a pruta, so too a woman you cannot marry with a pruta according to Beis Shammai. Asks the Gemara, Ve'ema palga de dinar, ve'ema shtei prutais. It's very good. You have a raya. It has to be a denomination that could be subtracted from. But says the Gemara, fine. So you know it can't be 1 pruta. Maybe it's a half a dinar. Maybe it's 2 prutais. Answers the Gemara an interesting teretz. Kivan da'afig say me pruta akma dinar. Once it's not going to be a pruta, we jump to the next amount, which is a dinar. And this is, as we find often in the shiurim of Chazal, we try to give round amount, and therefore explains the Gemara, once it's not going to be a pruta, we bump it up to a dinar. Rava Amar comes like Rava with a 4th explanation, as Beis Shammai learns why it's a dinar. I know Tamay to Beis Shammai Shaloye b'noisi Yisrael kehefker. We don't want a b'noisi Yisrael. We want to make sure that they have an appropriate evaluation. Look in Rashi on the 5th narrow line, and Rashi says, we don't want them to be hefker liknois b'davar mu'ot midrabanan u'dekamer la Beis Shammai. This is a din derabanan. After Rabbanan the Kiddushin hapsuchem b'dinar. That the Rabbanan came along and said, we don't want it to be less than a dinner. We want to make sure that every Bas Yisrael, every Jewish girl gets the appropriate amount, and that's the reason why, according to Beis Shammai, we evaluated that the Kiddushin has to be at least a dinner. With that, we continue on the first wide line, and we go into Shitas Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel, says the Gemara, first wide line. Savar Rav Yosef lememer bruta koldehu. What type of bruta? Any type of bruta. As Rashi speaks out, kol mash adorais mishanim es matveya b'amish abayischen b'amish amaysivim b'mishkalan. Whatever the smallest coin is, that's going to be what the denomination will be according to Beis Hillel. Amar le Abaye asks Abaye v'alakatani, asks Abaye, but regarding the pruta of Beis Hillel, we learned kama pruta, how much is a pruta? 1/8 of Italian coin. V'chitim, and if you're going to suggest, like you just said, it's only 1/8 of an Italian coin in the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. Aval, Hacham, but here, where we said a prusha, it's referring to the amount that we will designate of a pruta. How could that be? Asked the Gemara in the 4th wide line. Rabbi Simai b'dayrai kami pruta echad b'shmayna b'eser etalki v'chiyasa Rabin Amar Rav Distay v'Rav Yani v'Rav Oishiyah Shiru kami pruta echad b'shish b'eser etalki. So ask the Gemara, we see that it is a fixed amount, as in the latter generations they're giving their equivalent in the conversion how much it was. So it's clearly not just the smallest denomination of coin in each times. Amr le Rav Yosef answers, Rav Yosef Yachi Hainu Tanina. If it's true that the pruta could be less, that even the 1/8 of, if it's true that the pruta worth less does not work, Hainu Tanina, then how do we explain the following price that says, say, Hainu Tanina, say, Vachashav Kami Prutas B'Shnei Slayim, Yoiser Me'al Payim. Go and calculate how many prutas are in 2 slayim, more than 2,000. Hashta. Al Payim Mayavya, if a pruta cannot be less than 1/8, there's certainly not 2,000 prutas in a sela. Yeser Me'al Payim Karlu. And the Tana calls them more than 2,000. What's going on? It must be that we have to be talking about a pruta of a lower value. Amrlo, so there was someone there that was Su Saba, responded to Rav Yosef, Anat Tinina Lam. I learned the price as well, and it just meant Karoiv La'alpayim. So there's no raya. It means close to 2,000. Says the Gemara, do the math. So Saif Alba V'chamish Meo Tlasav V'shito. Ask the Gemara, really, once there's only 8 prutais in an Isser, it comes out that 2 sellers, 1,536. Tavion. Explains the Gemara, fastly Taras. We've seen this similarly in other Gemaras. Kim the Naflumi Palga. Karav La'apayim Kailu. Once we cross the halfway mark, we round it up. So too over here, we're at 1,500. We round it to 2,000. Says the Gemara, let's delve a little bit deeper into this math. Kufa. Kiasa Rav Dimi Amar Shirav Simai B'Dara Kami Bro Tachamash B'Isr Yitalki Kiasa Ravin Amar Shirav Distoiv Rav Yanav Rav Shikami Bro Tachamash B'Isr Yitalki Amar Le'abayah Rav Dimi Nema At V'Ravin B'Blukta Dani Tanai Kamifliki. What's the machlekes that you just set forth of 1/8 or 1/6? Maybe it's the following machlekes. Titania, we learned in a brayso, which is what? Sheish ma'a kasef dinar ma'a shnei pedyunin podyan shnei yisurin iser shnei musmisin mismei mishnei kontrikon kontrikan shnei prutais. So when you do the math, nimsa pruta echad mishwane b'srei talki. That's the Tanakam. Comes along Rashbag. Oh, mer shloisha adrasin lemeya. 3 adrasin for a meya ma. Shnei insin leidrish. Shnei shimnin leinis. Beis prutais leshimnin. Nimsa. And after he does his math, what does it come out? Pruta achas mishisha b'sar italki. So suggest the Gemara, the brayso we just said. Leima demar damik Tanakama. V'ravin damar. Kirashbag. Maybe the first opinion holds like the Tanakama and Ravin holds like Rashbag. And that's how we get 1/8 of Isra Italki, or 1/6. Amar Lei. Rav Dimi responds to Abaya. Bein Didi, Bein Ravin, Eliba Tanakama. We're all going in the Tanakama's world. V'lo kasha. Ha'di Iker Yisuri. Ha'di Zoli Yisuri. One is where they're in a higher valuation, and one is where they're in a lower valuation. Hadi Yisuri come Esim Arba Bezuzah, there's 24 and 1 Zuz. Hadizal then come to Salasin with terrain, 32 Bezuzah. So this has to do with different values of the time that we're referring to. Amar Shmuel, Kedsha Betimra, Afilu Oimeid Kor Tamarim Bedinar, Mekudeshes. Once we're on the minimum amount, you have to be utilizing to be Mekadesh as a woman. Says Shmuel, if so marries a woman but gives her 1 date, even if a whole core of dates is 1 dinar, so how much is 1 date? A dat? They're Mekudeshes. Why? Because Chashin and Shemesh have a pruta. Maybe that 1 date is worth a pruta be Maldai. Maybe there's somewhere in the world that dates aren't so common and therefore it is worth a pruta. Asks the Gemara 1 second, has to be a bruta or shave bruta. So asks the Gemara, how can you tell me? Ask the Gemara. 1 second, it's not working. Ask the Gemara, but if it goes by any place in the world, then what? Meisel said, as you were the bruta, shava bruta. What do you mean? anything could be worth something somewhere in the world. And if you're going to take all that into consideration, so what did Hillel teach us by saying it has to be worth a bruta? Explains the Gemara, Loi kasha, ha bekedushe vadai, ha bekedushe safek. All just means it's kedushe safek, doesn't mean it's an actual kedushin. So when Beis Hillel said it has to be worth a bruta, that's to affect a real kedushin. When the Brisa said we have to be chayshin for a kedushin with one tamar, that's a suffix. Continues the Gemara with a story. 8 lines to the bottom. First word line is Ha'u Gavra. Ha'u Gavra dekdish bizavda. It was a person that was mekadesh with a bundle of flock, or di. Yasser Rav Simi Barachia Kamei Derav. Kamayin, they were looking into these. Vishava Bruta, is this item worth a Shava Bruta? If you let me Shava Bruta, ask the Gemara, Loi. I've Amar Shmuel, but Shmuel has taught us Chayshinan. But Shmuel has taught us that we have to be chayshish, that maybe it's worth a Bruta elsewhere. So how can you tell me that it's not a Kiddushin? Explains the Gemara the same terror. So Kasha Avik Vada Avik Safik. And another story, Ukavra, 4 lines in the bottom of Beizam and Alf. Tegdish Ba'avna de Kochla. He got married the blue stone. Yes, and they were evaluating this blue stone. He is Beijava Brutain. Eli. Ask the Gemara the same Kasha. Let's Beijava Bruta live. Amar Shmuel. Chai Shinan. Rav Chisla. Stuff like Shmuel. Rav Chisda argues on Shmuel. Continues the Gemara. Back into the story of our blue stone. Amrolei. So after looking into it, Rav Chisda said, Lamaisa, the stone is not worth a pruta, and therefore there's no kedushin. Amrlei, but the mother of the first man said, Amrlei imei, va'huya ima, but on that day, the kidsha, having shava pruta. Very good, you Rav Chisda Kittelen sees not worth the shava pruta, but the mama said, 1 second, on that day it was worth the shava pruta. Amar la, so Rav Chisda responds, Avkol kaminach ta'asr la, Abasra, it's not in your power to say that it was worth a Shava Bruta, thereby make this woman forbidden on anyone else. Says the Gemara as we turn over to Yud Beis and Beis, Lav, Hainu di Yehudis de Bisud Rav Chisda. Is this not the same case as Yehudis, the wife, of Rav Chisda, that what? Avalei Tsar Leida. What happened was, Rav Chisda, the wife of Rav Chia, was in a lot of pain during Leida. Amralei. So she said, Amrali. So what happened is, she said to Rav Chia, her husband, my mother said to me, Kibol beich avuch Kiddushin kizutra. When you were small, your father accepted Kiddushin from you from another man, not from Rav Chia, and therefore your husband's aser. Amar la, and Rav Chia responded, your mother doesn't have the power to say such a thing, and thereby aser you on me, on the whole world. So what do we see from here? We see from here that even the edus of one person would not have the validity to make the kedushin chal or not, and thereby make the person aser al kol ha'olam. Says the Gemara, let's delve a little bit deeper into the story of the blue stone. Amrulei Rabbanan Rav Chisda, 5 lines down, Yud Beis, Amid Beis. Amai, what is the reason why you're telling me there's no kedushin? In this case of the blue stone, that you said it's not worth a shava pruta. 1 second, hoikasadi beidis. Tiyadi da'uyayim ave shava pruta. But there are witnesses in a place called this that no, it's actually worth a shava pruta. So why isn't there edus enough? Answers of Chisda, come on. Very good, there are Eidim, but those Eidim aren't here right now. Says the Gemara, 1 second, and Rav Chisda proves of Ainu de Rav Chanina, it's the din of Rav Chanina. Ta'amar Rav Chanina has taught us, we've added this Gemara in Ksubis, Idia bitzad istam v'tiyasar. You're saying Idia, this place Idia is in one place of the world, in the north, and you're going to make them aser? Of course not. The fact that there are Eidim, if the Eidim are not here, that's not going to help. And therefore, says Rav Chisda, the first Kiddushin with this blue stone was not with the Shava Pruta. That Kiddushin was invalid, and she could thereby go and marry someone else. That's Rav Chisda's opinion. Continues the Gemara 10 lines down. First one line is Tiyasar Abaya veRava Laisir Lulahad Rav Chisda. They argue on this din of Rav Chisda. Kilu b'shvuya dimenavla nafsha kabe shavai nekol beishes ish ishtayer. Says Abaya and Rava. 1 second. Mekel b'shvuya. If Rav Chanina was mekel the guard to a captured woman, that she's going to make herself unattractive by her captors. Nekel b'shes ish. Should it make any sense that we're going to be mekel by Nesis ish? No way. So certainly, in this case, we're going to have to be chayshish for the Kiddushin. Says the Gemara, Ishtayer me'ahu mishbacha besura. There were some descendants of that family, of the family of this woman who stayed with the second man in Surah. Parsha Rabbanan Mina, and the Rabbanan separated themselves from that family, refusing to marry. V'la misham desir le Shmuel, not because they held of Shmuel. Al misham desir le Kabaya v'Rava, of this last teretz, that there was reason to be chayshish for Kiddushin. We wrap up today's share with a few more stories. Aho Gavram, Araya to Shmuel. Deiktish b'shutisa. There was a man who was mekadesh with a branch of a myrtle, where shutisa da'asa, branch of a myrtle b'shuka in the shuk. Shalcha Ravacha Baruna lekamed Rav Yosef. Rach Baruna sent Rav Yosef kai gavna mai. What's halach in this case? Shalach lei. He responded, Nagdei Kirav. You get Malkos like Rav. Vitzrach Gita Kishmuel. Get Malkos according to Rav. I need to get like Shmuel. Says the Gemara, what does this mean that you need Malkos according to Rav? Brings us back to Gemara Nivamas that we learned. As we've already mentioned, that being Mekadesh with Kiddushin is not optimal. The Rav Mangin al the Mekadesh Beshuka. Rav gave Malkos to anyone that was Mekadesh, number one, in the marketplace. And number two, Val Mekadesh B'Biyah, anyone that got married, the Kiddushin with an act of Biyah. Val the Mekadesh B'Lo Shaduchi, anyone that got married without Shaduchim, which means over here without a agreement to get married. Val the Mevatel Gita, and he gave Malkos for a husband who was Mevatel a get. Val the Masar Maida Gita, and furthermore a husband who gave a Maida on the get that he didn't mean to write the get. Val the Metzayer Shtuchim de Rabbanan, anyone who's harassing the Shtuchim de Rabbanan. Val the Chala Shamta Iluyei Talasan Yamim, and for anyone that stays in a case of Shamta, in a case of excommunication for 30 days. Val Chasana, and for a groom, the Dayer Bechamua, who lives in his father-in-law's house. So in all of these cases, Rav Mangid, Rav gave Malkos for all of these cases, as Rav held, it was inappropriate to live in that house, inappropriate to be married b'Kiddushin, inappropriate to be married without Shadochem, inappropriate to be married b'Shuk, etc., etc. Says the Gemara, what do we see from this list? The Dayerin, Chalav Loi. Seems like only if he lives in his father-in-law's house. But Chalaf, if he merely passes by, it's not a problem. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Vahu Chasana, there was a certain group, the Chalav Ababa Devei Chamua, who passed by his father-in-law's house. V'nagdi Rav Sheishes. Rav Sheishes gave Malkos. Answers the Gemara, in that case, Meidam Havas Deimich Hamasei Minei. The mother-in-law was previously suspected, and that's the reason why they were more machmir. But usually it's only if he lives in the house of the in-laws before they got married, and not just by passing by. Finally, the Gemara continues with other cases that Rav gave Malkos. Nahar Doi Amri Beikulu Loi Mangid Rav. About 15 lines to the bottom of your base and my base. First one line is Nahar Doi. In all of these cases, Rav did not give Malkos, says Nahar Doi. Ella, only on which case, Al de Mekadesh B'Biyah, Beloi Sheduchi, only one who got married through Biyah without having a Shidduch, meaning without having an original agreement to marry this woman. Vika di Amri, and some say, Vafil B'Shiduchi Nami, even if there was Shidduchim and they had a formal agreement to get married, still, Rav gave Malkos for anyone who's Mekadesh B'Biyah. Why? Misham Pritzusa, because it's Pritzos to get married through Biyah. We conclude with a final case. Aho Gavra, they Kaddish B'Sifsa Dasa. They got married with a mat of myrtle twigs. Amrulei. So they said to this guy, Voles Bishavar Bruta. Amrulei, take the Shvarba Zuzi the Isba. Let her be married with the 4 zuz, which are inside the mat. Shaklasa. She kept the money. She didn't give it back to him. Vishtika, and she was quiet. Amar Rava Havishtikusa Dilachar Matan Mois. It's a case where someone being quiet after giving money. V'kol Shtikusa Lachar Matan Mois. Lav Klum He. The fact that the woman didn't say anything is irrelevant, and therefore she's not considered to be Mikudeshes. Why? Because we don't know necessarily that she agreed to the Kiddushin just from the fact that she took the money. Amar Rava proves Rava Manan Amina law. Where do I know this halacha? The Tanya, we learned in a Raisa, 6 lines from the bottom of the Beis and Beis. Amar law. If someone says to the woman, Kinsi Sela Azupipikadin, take this Sela as a security collateral. V'chazra Amar, and then he says to her, you know what? His guy Chili boy, marry me with that Sela. B'shas matamois mikudeshes lachar matamois. If it's the time the money is being given and she accepts the money, then we say she accepted as Kiddushin. But lachar matamois, if he says it's ratza mikudeshes, loy ratza, einoi mikudeshes, depends if she consents to that which he said. Says the Gemara, what does that mean? My ratza, my loy ratza. Ilem ratza damra in, loy ratza damra loy. If you're going to tell me that, what does it mean, Ratza? She said yes, Lo Ratza. She said no. Says Mar 1 second. Mechlal de Reisha, from there we would infer that in the first case, Ki Amra, Loi Nami Avi Kiddushin, it would sound like in the first case, even when she said no, it's still going to be a Kiddushin. How could that be? As we turn over to Yigimel and Aleph, how could that be? Miyamai, Vakamra Loi. She said Loi. Elalav Ratza de Amra in. Loi ratza deishtika mishtika. She was quiet. Ushmami no, and this is haraya. Shtuki delachar mata mois. V'loi klum he, being quiet after money is given is inconsequential. Therefore, back in our case in which after she accepted the mat, the husband said, by the way, the money inside should be the Kiddushin. If she was quiet, it is not a raya that she accepted as a Kiddushin. We'll pick it up from here. We'll pick up asking kashas on Rava on the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.